welcome to the channel. In this video I will continue with the Prussian 1852 sword for the cavalry, but I will cover the upgraded version, which was the 1852/79 model. The 1852/79 sword really was just an upgrade in terms of blade. The standard one was replaced with a pipe back type, which was slightly curved and made much more heavier. This change was made after the Franco-Prussian War of 1870, and maybe it was because the previous standard blade didn't meet expectations, or it is possible that it was because thrusting proved to be more efficient in combat. Perhaps it was simply because the army wanted to modernize its armament. In any case, the ministerial order was given on March 25, 1879 to change the blades. I don't think this was for all existing 1852, however. There are many examples that are still encountered today having the older blade, yet having later modifications. It is most likely that the order focused on the newly produced swords and those that were awaiting repairs at the artillery depot. Aside from the blade, there was another subtle change, which was towards the finger loop encountered in the inner part of the hilt. The previous version was attached with a screw, but on this form it was ordered to be attached directly to the structure, though even this aspect is not frequently found in an existing specimen, so it is hard to determine to what extent it was truly enforced. The rest of the sword was kept unchanged. The hilt was the exact same thing as the model 1852, and so was the scabbard, whose only modification was later in the century when the low ring was removed. This new model was issued to the troopers and the NCOs of the Dragoon and Hussar regiments, and as of January 22, 1880, it was also given to the field gendarmerie and cavalry supply units. Another group who was given these were, interestingly enough, the trumpeters of the Uhlans regiments, and only the trumpeters because the troopers already had the new 1873 Uhlans sabre. Since the other German states had their own cavalry swords, it wasn't copied by them, with again the exception of Saxony. If you remember what I said in the 1852 video, Saxony also copied that model for their own version of the 1867 sword. This time again, they followed the Prussian version by switching the blade. However, some of their models had different grips that could be either ergonomic or pistol-shaped, like this sword here that was for the Gerd Reiter. Unlike the trooper version, it seems that the private purchase models that were offered by sword makers and cutlers were much better, as these were lighter and more embellished. As a result, they were of much superior handling and quality, and also quite attractive. This explains why they were popular enough with the NCOs and the officers, and why many are still found in the market today. Since the sword belonged to the army and the units it was sent to, it had stamps on the fittings to indicate when it passed inspection and at what date it was issued for service. The most interesting aspect when collecting German swords, but not only German swords, is to find out if it had any regimental markings that indicated where it served. And as you can see in the sword, there are many units marked on the hilt. And to be honest, this is one of the reasons why I keep the sword in my collection, because it has seen a lot of history. Many stamps have been scratched off, but some are still readable, which are LJH2 and an unreadable number, RIM 3256, GTF 512. Then we have on the other way TF 644 or something, G or 6, AF 655 or something like that, and last 6AF 6K2 and maybe 24. The blade has the inspection and the date, which is 85, under the W, meaning it was made during the reign of Kaiser William I. The ricasso has the date 86, which is when it was issued for service. It has a maker's mark, which is F.A. Hermes or Hermes in Solingen. The scabbard also could have markings found on the side and in the drag, such as here, for example, where you can see a 6RH214. The drag is marked with a handful of stamps, such as the maker W and ST and 96, which is presumably the date of inspection of the scabbard. Of course, this scabbard is mismatched with the sword since the markings do not match. Just 10 years after its introduction, the model 1852/79 was replaced by a more practical sword for the cavalry, which appeared in 1889. And this one is also known as the KD89 sword. So the 1879 sword or Saab was issued to the supply troops, who already had a bunch of different older patterns that they still carried in their ranks until the end of World War I. Unlike the 1852 model that saw action during the Schleswig and Franco-Prussian Wars, the 1879 did not participate in any conflict where it could prove its efficiency. So why was it changed so quickly? Maybe one explanation is because of its weight, because it is drastically different from its predecessor. In my humble opinion, the blade is too heavy and unbalanced, nose heavy, which defeats the purpose of the sword. I can understand that the blade was made strong to deal with any specific target, but in the long term your arm is going to get tired very quickly. And that is a problem when this weapon was meant to be used by the dragoons, the lancers, and especially the hussars. These ones being not the tallest and the most muscular men in the German army. So it was not their ideal weapon. Especially more so when you realize that even the cuirassiers, who were the tallest and the strongest men in the cavalry, had swords that were heavy, but they're not so clumsy and unbalanced as this one. At least this sword can be handled without much of a problem. So, this is not my favorite sword of all times, far from it. Too heavy, too clumsy, too unbalanced. But it does have a lot of percussive and stabbing power. I have no doubt that this can pierce any type of armor, but these advantages are too specific to be used for regular cavalry. Perhaps the failure of this sword is, or could explain why the German army decided to arm its cavalry with the lance as the main weapon and the sword being relegated to a backup or service weapon. So this ends today's presentation. If you wish to voice your opinion or add details about the sword, feel free to comment in the section below. Many thanks for having watched the video. See you soon.